Hi, I'm Topher White. I'm from Rainforest Connection. We're a nonprofit tech startup based in San Francisco, working on tech solutions to illegal logging and environmental destruction around the world and conservation in general. But one of the best ways to talk about the work we do is to take us into the place where this work actually takes place. And so this is the rainforest. This is actually the rainforest of Sumatra. And when you first go to the rainforest, one of the things that really strikes you is like the cacophony of noise. There's just so many things happening in the soundscape itself. But occasionally, there are little things that kind of stick out. So this is a hornbill. It's a large bird. This is a cicada. And these are gibbons, these amazing apes that sing to each other from a great distance all throughout Indonesia. Now, this place we're actually listening to is a gibbon reserve. This is a place that rehabilitates gibbons that had been taken as pets in captivity and releases them into the wild. And in doing so, they actually have to protect a large amount of forest, act as a corridor for the gibbons to get out. And so actually they spend a decent amount of their time trying to stop illegal logging on the outskirts. But it's hard sometimes. Until you can turn down the sounds of the other parts of the forest and listen up. There actually was the sound of a chainsaw behind the other sounds there in the forest the entire time. So this cacophony of noise sometimes makes it very difficult to hear or even notice. And this one area that we're looking at, just walking sometimes 5-10 minutes from a ranger station, you'll actually find trees that have been cut down, really just within the scope of time that you've been there listening. Now, this is one of the things that really kind of is heartbreaking for some of the people there in the field. To know where stuff is when it happens really is difficult and makes a big difference. So our goal is to help try and stop this. How can we make it possible for people in the field to stop illegal logging? Now, technology, of course, is our approach to things. There's lots of solutions that already exist. There's satellite monitoring, seriously one of the most effective tools for understanding deforestation at scale, but still not real time enough usually to be able to stop it. There's camera traps for catching both animal activity as well as human activity. There's community monitoring with smartphone apps. There's drones, of course, which are a solution to almost anything, and there's aerial surveys. But none of these, in fact, would have helped them actually get out there and stop these logging that we're talking about in Indonesia. So here's the solution that we have. The moment that a chainsaw goes off in the forest, the sound is picked up by a device up in the trees, is transferred through the cell phone network to the cloud, who can send an alert to local people on the ground who can get on there and be like, what? And they jump on their motorcycles and they get out there and they look to stop the loggers in the act, in this terribly realistic rendition of exactly how it would happen out there in the field. But of course, to accomplish this, you need devices. You need sort of devices up in trees to listen to the sounds of the forest and pick out the sounds. And in inertial limitation, we were able to use old smartphones. One of the these old things we throw away by the hundreds of millions every year. We put them in a box with solar panels and a powerful microphone. They can listen to all the sounds of the forest and stay powered for long periods of time and actually stream that audio and the insights up through the cloud to a system that's able to alert those on the ground. This way, we're able to use existing infrastructure that's already there, people who are already on the ground to make a difference. And of course, we can build this using very, very widespread software and hardware tools. Here's me sort of putting together the very first rendition of it many years ago in a garage in Silicon Valley, which is a rite of passage that you have to do if you're there. And so this is one of them up on the trees, but just talking and building something in Silicon Valley doesn't really amount to helping to protect any particular forest. So I had to get it back out in the field. So I took it back to Indonesia, to another gibbon reserve, this time in Sumatra. Put it up in the initial version up in the trees, and really on the second day picked up the sounds of chainsaws. In fact, at this point, the other people were climbing trees. They climbed up, they put one up there, came back down. All these guys are smoking cigarettes. I'd only been in the forest for about 3 or 4 days at that point for the first time, and suddenly get an alert on our phone that there's been chainsaws. So everyone kind of quiets down, and we sort of run off through the forest to get there, moving about maybe 3 or 4 kilometers through the forest. And when we get there, this is the moment when I'm really kind of regretting this entire endeavor. I don't really know what I'm going to do, but he's moving now, so I got to move. And we get up over the hill, and we actually interact and stop the loggers in the act. So in this case, they were able to talk them down. They were able to point out to them that if they continue to log in this area, the rangers, as you just saw in front of us, will show up to stop them in real time. It's just a testament to how technology in the hands of people on the ground who actually do something about it can make a difference, especially if they're able to leverage that information to influence people who were there. So this was the first time we ever tested in the field. On the second day, it worked. And of course, this is not about us listening to it. It's about automatic detection. That's why we're all here on this conference. To be able to pick out the sound of chainsaws, as you can see with these harmonics there, is fairly straightforward. The initial version of this didn't use any AI at all. We were able to just pick out harmonic signatures within the soundscape. This is, of course, a very close distance. Picking out chainsaws at that distance is not too difficult, but you can see this lends itself perfectly to an automated system. But let's actually back up for a second and talk about illegal logging in general. Saving the rainforest is something that we all kind of heard about for many years. I've certainly heard about it my entire life. And it turns out there might be other things in front of us that matter from the point of view of conservation, like climate change. They're very urgent. But it turns out that that almost 20% of all the carbon emissions every year come from deforestation. That's more than all the transportation put together. All the cars, trucks, planes, ships, trucks combined don't add up to the carbon emissions coming from deforestation. And in the rainforest, between 50 and 90%, up to 90% of the logging is illegal. And if it's illegal, there's a mandate to stop it with people on the ground who would actually do it. And it turns out that this could be one of the fastest, cheapest ways for us to fight climate change today. If we can help people on the ground stop the illegal deforestation, that could be the issue. And illegal logging, of course, is highly illegal in those areas. But logging itself doesn't necessarily really clear the forest. Illegal logging is so profitable. They'll just go in, they'll take out the biggest trees, the most expensive ones. But they can make so much money from this in the illegal trade that they'll actually cut roads through the forest. They'll cut roads that go through here, as you can see. Now, once that road is there, the loggers themselves may leave, having taken the most expensive wood, but the roads themselves lead to small-scale farms, burning, other logging, and one illegal road in a forest can lead to the wholesale destruction of the forest. So if you can stop the illegal logging, which again is primarily a huge part of logging in these areas, if you can stop the illegal logging, you can stop the roads. If you can stop the roads, you can stop the wholesale destruction of a forest, which means this might be one of the fastest, cheapest ways for us to fight climate change today. So based on these metrics, the amount of carbon that's stored in these forests is huge. So one of these devices up in the trees, listening to large parts of the forest and alerting people, that covers about 3 square kilometers, because we're looking at about a 1 kilometer radius for hearing chainsaws. That's 15,000 tons of CO2 that's stored there that you can avoid being released into the environment, which means that that's equivalent to 3,000 cars off the road. So working with local people to protect just 3 square kilometers of forest can be equivalent to thousands upon thousands of cars off the road for a year. That's why we have to do it, because protecting forests is a really important part of it. And even though a device can only cover 3 square kilometers itself, you don't need to cover an entire area. You, of course, can work through the outskirts, through the perimeter, and that's why you're able to get a lot more done. But let's actually talk about more just in the field. So heading into the Amazon, if you look at the edge of the Amazon, we put this up all over the place, you have this ocean of deforestation that's taken place, but these islands are pretty intact forest. You can see them here in this image. Those are actually not traditional protected areas. Those are indigenous reserves, ones where the indigenous people have been given rights to both control and protect their land. And there clearly seems to be a correlation between giving indigenous people rights and actually having a forest be protected. We started working with the Tembe tribe, one of these tribes, in 2014. This is an area about the size of, in American standards, Yosemite National Park. It's about 3,000 square kilometers or 2,500 square kilometers of forest. And this area is very large. This is the Tembe themselves. This is the people doing one of their ceremonies. And there's about 2,000 of them left in this area. And they, of course, have to control it entirely on their own. And just, when we met them, this entire purple area you see here was entirely controlled by illegal loggers, settlers, and drug cartels, meaning the Tembe were entirely confined to these areas on the left and right. And just moving from one town to the other, from one village to the other, they would sometimes run across full-scale, fully equipped logging trucks, well armed as well. The only thing they could really do in this situation is get out of there. And so this is where they really needed some extra help and tools to get involved. But they realized that this was an existential struggle for them. And in that same year, they put together a ranger corps of 30 rangers who were able to control this area. But controlling an area of this size is immensely difficult. It takes hours just to move through small fractions of this area. And so some monitoring system was really important for them. Fortunately, there actually is cell phone service in this area. It is pretty far away, but each one of these little dots actually represents a cell phone tower. And although you're talking just the area from even the closest one of these to the area is sometimes 10, 15 kilometers away. So in order to pick up cell phone service, you just can't get it on the ground. So we actually trained the Tembe to build these devices that you saw. This is Alivar, the son of one of the chiefs, putting together one of our devices. At this point, we're still using old cell phones. And then, of course, we can train them to install them as well, because this needs to be a scalable solution to get it out there. And so, climbing very tall in trees, in this case about 50 meters up in trees to get up there, to put them near roads, places where the loggers would get in to install them. In this case, you can actually pick up cell phone service from 15, 20 kilometers away, meaning you can really extend the range of what's there and protect large areas. So at this point, the Tembe themselves are able to get these things installed throughout their area, be able to sort of respond in kind. And let's look at how this actually gets used in the field. So again, just to recap, what this sort of looks like for them is the moment a chainsaw goes off in the forest, the sound is picked up by a device in the tree, transmits through our API, which is able to pick out the sounds of danger, to a local mobile app, the Ranger app we call it, which then alerts people on the ground so they can stop it, or mobilize to stop it. This is kind of the idea behind it. This is what a web version of our system looks like. Of course, you can hear these detections. This is a TensorFlow-based model. These sort of squares represent the positives in our system. Let's see if you can hear the chainsaw. Of course, you can't hear that. This is just at less than half a kilometer away, so not very far away. But what happens when you're dealing with an area that's enormous like this, where there's just thousands of square kilometers and many, many kilometers from where events are likely to take place? That's where you end up getting real data like this. And see if you can hear the chainsaw in this one. So it is there. Hopefully you can hear it. But it is, of course, very, very subtle. And actually building a model that's able to pick out these sounds of chainsaws from that distance is very, very hard, because you can even barely see it in the spectrogram. But in this case, as you can see, there are false positives coming from this. And that's where AI is absolutely essential. The original machine learning is essential. That the original sort of harmonic-based detector would not have worked in this context. So then, of course, the Rangers use this mobile app we have for them to be able to get it, and they themselves can even review the alerts. So in this case, they get the exact same information that we have, because they need to know what they're getting into, and they need to be able to prove it. And in doing so, we're actually crowdsourcing the data quality of our detectors as well, and be able to retrain them. So this is how the Rangers themselves get that information. And moving into the field, of course, in the case of the Tembe, with those detections that you saw, it creates a situation like this, where they're able to get out to the end of the road and actually intercept these trucks on the way out. Of course, it's better if they can get there before, but in this case, we're just trying to disrupt this operation. At the end of this road, that was imagine there's 30 Rangers waiting for them. The Tembe themselves are able to seize the equipment, arrest, for all intents and purposes, the loggers themselves. In many ways, they have to disable or destroy the equipment there on the spot to disrupt the operations, and burn the trucks as well. So this is essentially what happens when there's no law and order in an area. Somebody has to take responsibility for protecting the area. The indigenous people are doing that because this is their land. And this is what sort of imposing law and order sometimes can look like for people in the field. But let's just back up for a second and talk about these guys. These are one of our typical partners. These are people on the ground who are just trying to protect their own backyard, right? They're just trying to protect their own backyard and their culture, but it's up to them to do it. And protecting that forest is important for the entire planet, not just for biodiversity, but for climate change. Each one of these guys who've never been to a city, no official school, they have more impact on fighting climate change sometimes than dozens of engineers at a clean tech company. And so sometimes building tech tools for them, the least technical amongst us, can be the most effective way for us to make a difference in environmental issues. And that's why we're trying to build tools that they themselves can use to protect their backyard, because we need them to do it. They're the only ones who can. So this again is one of our projects. We spread throughout the world in 14 countries, 5 continents, large amounts of areas. But for us, big right now, even with COVID, we are spreading out into the world. So as we speak, as you're watching this, we're spreading out into 5 new countries. It's been difficult to get out there, but by no means has COVID helped to protect the environment. In many ways, it's putting more pressure on these areas. And so these tools are just as important as always to getting people to be able to protect it. But we're expanding into 5 new regions. We hope we'll have some more. This is what the same types of success looks like in different countries. Again, Peru, back in Brazil again. This is in Indonesia, where they were able to disrupt an operation and seize the logs. It is unfortunate sometimes that they get caught after the damage has been done. The most effective situations are ones where they can get there as fast as possible and not have to stop a truck full of wood, because then the stakes are much, much lower. So these are the tools that we kind of look at them, that we build for them. This again is one that generates reports, but let's take a look at the soundscapes in general. So again, you've seen these spectrograms in previous slides, but this is the soundscape of the forest. You can see there's a lot of stuff happening here. This one is actually from Sumatra. And of course, we build the tools to make these things available to people. But what are all the ways in which you can use this data beyond just stopping loggers, right? We're listening all the time. We're streaming live audio up into the cloud. And so, of course, yes, we can pick out threats. But what about if we're able to make all these streams available to people? Because that's important as well. So anyone can listen in live to the sounds of the forest from every single device that we put up in trees. And these things can last for years. We've had ones that lasted for 3 or 4 years. So how much audio is that can be used to understand these soundscapes and, of course, bring pleasure and interest to the entire planet, and hopefully build more consensus around protecting them. So hopefully you'll get this app and listen in, but there's even more tools for you as well. And again, these are soundscapes that can be used for bioacoustic studies. So here's an interface that we have for annotating. Of course, any machine learning is built on annotation. Scientists are able to jump in, find a call that they like, in this case, gibbons, as you've heard, and then annotate them right there, right? And so the moment this annotation is created, that becomes an example of a species call within the system. And they can play it back. This is the Explorer interface, which we'll be releasing in the next couple of months. But even so, this is already connected to our larger sort of bioacoustic science interface called Arbimon. Because again, we're there to empower people to get involved in these issues, not just ourselves. So this, of course, is Arbimon. The moment that you annotate a single call, we can use even computer vision, not even machine learning in this case, to sort of quickly scan through and actually pick out examples of that call from the system, reapply them to machine learning models. So it's a quick way to take, all you have to do is draw a box around one particular point in time, and suddenly you can use that to find that species call throughout the entire system. So hopefully these are tools that we can get the entire machine learning community to use and help scientists as well. So in this case, what's great is that because you have suddenly this tool that makes it easy to annotate a few calls and start picking things out, suddenly building models for individual species becomes quite much simpler. And so then you have situations like this. What are all the ways in which machine learning needs to tell us about what's there? So again, this is a scrolling spectrogram of a feed from Sumatra, and you can see that we're not just looking for one thing. We're looking for everything all at once. And when you begin to have these really precise insights into how animals are interacting, what they're saying to each other, when they're saying to each other, when some speak and others don't, you have that very precise down to the second, but you also have it across months, years of audio streams, continuous streams. You're able to then apply big data techniques and say, wow, what are the ways in which ecology changes over time due to climate change or others? What are the ways in which certain species do or don't interact with each other? It's almost like a microscope into a world we've never seen before. What are the ways in which we can use sound, which again, as we mentioned, is the essence of the forest? How can we use that to really understand the way the forest is put together that humans themselves never would have picked out? Big data techniques to help understand and create hypotheses for ecology in general. That's what I'm really excited about. And when you look at something like this, it almost becomes, it's like an era of discovery potentially as important as the invention of the microscope, which again showed us a world that no one imagined before. There's a whole world of ecology and interaction in animals that has not been discovered because people themselves cannot physically hear or see what's there. This is what we hope to bring about through platforms like this. Let's actually look at how this manifests itself in the field. So we can dive into Costa Rica. This is the Osa Peninsula. And we can talk about spider monkeys. This again is a critically endangered monkey. Just hanging out up in trees. These are really important. You wouldn't think that a monkey was important for the mere survival of the forest, but in fact, they are just seed dispersal. They're the primary seed dispersal mechanism for a lot of these important tree species. But beyond that, beyond protecting them, what are all the ways in which you can start to hear things just based on what the animals say? So here's a great example. Here we're looking at a soundscape in the forest. Turns out there was an earthquake in the middle of the night. Now monkeys are making noise all day long, but at nighttime they sleep. And occasionally something will happen, and you can see the monkeys themselves will actually, I don't know. So here an earthquake suddenly starts shaking the tree. And you can see all the other animals start quieting down. You can imagine this tree just shaking all over the place. The trees move. And the moment that this earthquake ends, suddenly you start to hear these spider monkeys who would be sleeping, waking up and saying, what was that? Now, we only found out about this earthquake because suddenly we get calls that there's spider monkeys making noise in the middle of the night. That's not normal. And so these are the ways in which nature, this is a very brute force example, but these are the ways in which nature itself can tell you what's happening even when you're not listening for the specific thing itself. Now imagine taking that same idea and fast forwarding it and saying, wow, you know that when a hunter is walking through the forest, when a tiger is walking through the forest, they may not be making noise, but you know the other animals are talking about them. So being able to hear things that don't make noise by using the soundscape of the forest and the other animals that do can make a big difference in conservation and protection. So let's talk about one more. Again, it's not just about the forest either, because this is built as an online web platform, or sorry, AI API platform. We're able to take other live audio streams and plug them in. In this case, this is from Vancouver. We're able to essentially take a stream of from hydrophones and send real-time alerts when orcas, orca whales, show up within shipping lanes for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Google built a really, really great AI model for detecting orcas and humpbacks. And all we had to do was take the live stream from the hydrophone, plug in the model from Google, and suddenly we're sending alerts every time whales show up in the shipping lane. Through the same mechanism we use for sending chainsaws. That's the power of connecting these things together in the cloud. And in fact, this case, this was a super gathering of a critically endangered species, of which there's only a few dozen of this one species left. And there was a super gathering of them in this one place. So being able to capture that for scientific purposes is pretty amazing too. And it sounds so cool. So just jumping back for a second, again, these are these guardians up in trees. What's the major goal of all this? The major goal is to show that technology can build almost like a global nervous system for the planet, ways in which we can sense what's happening, understand it, and bring it all together. What does that look like? Well, again, there's 4 levels to this. There's sensation, ways in which we're sensing everything that's happening. That's the guardian. Those are the streams. That's how it's getting up into the API platform being organized. There's perception, which is the sort of machine learning models that you saw. What are we hearing? That's a chainsaw. That's a vehicle. That's a spider monkey. But obviously basing that on probabilities. But that's still just the first couple layers. How do you make a difference with this? It's cognition. That knowing what's there doesn't tell you what it means. So cognition is when we start to combine all these together with new ML models or so much more to really understand what does this all sort of come together to mean. That's the really exciting level of big data techniques that we hope to make use of. And then, of course, none of this matters without response. How do we get people there on the ground? So Rainforest Connection is really trying to take responsibility for building the technology behind all 4 of these and for getting it out into the field. And in terms of getting out in the field, this is kind of what it looks like. This is us getting it out all over the world. We're not just building tools and publishing papers on them, which is important too. We're trying to get them out and make sure that people are using them, because this is the moment to protect forests and we have to make a difference. And in doing so, with the even with all the issues with COVID, we are really taking this seriously, and the partners are insisting upon it. So over the next year, we expect to be covering many more, 6,000 more square kilometers of forest. I mean, from carbon impacts, that's 30 million tons of carbon, 6 million cars off the road, the equivalent, and hundreds of millions of trees protected. But again, you talked about the sort of you saw the bioacoustic elements of that as well. That's 450 years of audio. That's almost like an audio arc of what our planet is like in its living state right now. And that number of species that we can begin to detect and make available to scientists is really intense. This is part of our goals as well. And the technology itself hopefully can get simpler. We're trying to build this real-time way to hear what's out there. And again, we will always put these amazing guardians up in trees, but hopefully we can make it easier for anyone, citizen scientists, the rest, to put a phone on their windowsill, begin to record, make use of these platforms. And the more data that's there, the more easily it's organized, the easier we can make it for machine learning scientists, data scientists to actually connect with citizen scientists and share data. That's when we can make a difference. How can we make academia more collaborative, but still protect and improve the research overall? And all this comes back to us wanting to protect the forest. How can we stop illegal logging? How can we stop environmental destruction? It's important for us to know that we have to build value in the forest, but we have to do that from a distance. Protecting these places sometimes means leaving them alone, but by listening to them, by using this really amazing tool, the sound of our living planet. The sound of our living planet is so far, I believe, the greatest untapped resource for protecting it. And hopefully you've seen from this presentation ways in which that can be one of the most exciting things to experience of the forest from a distance. And that's the tool that we think we have yet to present to the world. So thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to hearing your feedback and questions.